Saying Arcane is a masterpiece is an understatement potentially of the century. It has done something that I think no other media has managed to properly transmit. Not in regards to adapting a game, not in regards to creating fascinating characters or an interesting world, not in regards to finally creating an animated piece of work based off League of Legends that is even better than the Rule 34. But Arcane has managed to take the entire medium of animation and character writing and video game adaptations and bring it to a new, glorious evolution. It is a new level of being. It is a new standard that has been set. From artistically beautiful to honestly audio masterful, thematically wonderful, and just butt-fucking riveting, goddammit. It is literally bringing me out of video essay retirement, and who knows, I might just start making video essays again purely because I wanted an excuse to talk about Arcane, and it reopened the floodgates, and I might be jumping back into this entire goddamn genre of YouTube content. It inspires me to create. Now, I used to do these videos talking about overpowered characters done right, and I think that Arcane has created possibly one of the greatest overpowered characters of all time in Viktor. Now, most overpowered characters specifically are not done right. When an overpowered character is introduced to the world, it either becomes like a complete asspull how they're eventually defeated, or it's just uncomfortable to watch them just be as strong as they are, knowing that some irrelevant bullshit is gonna happen to make them eventually, take an L. So not only is Viktor my second favorite character in all of Arcane, but Viktor is easily an overpowered character done right. Not only on a power level basis, but purely on a thematic writing basis. To truly understand Viktor as a character is to understand the workings of the entire story of Arcane. How his story fleshes out and entangles with every other theme of every other character in the greater narrative. And maybe you thought the end of Arcane was a little bit rushed. I mean, I think I did. Maybe you haven't watched Arcane yet, and maybe you just do love Arcane and you want to see someone else that also loves Arcane talk about it and overanalyze it to a degree that maybe you didn't see it from this perspective. Arcane is truly a piece of art, and anyone can have their own interpretations of a beautiful piece of art. Over here on the Nux Taku channel, I am just absorbing as much lore of as many franchises as I can, and I want to do more video essays, overanalyzing and focuses on various stories, because that's really what my passion is in regards to this specific channel. Not talking about the slop that I upload on Nuxanor. So buckle your seatbelts. Here's the Viktor analysis, and by Viktor, the entire broader themology of Arcane. This is what you asked for. Heavy is the crown. To qualify Viktor as an overpowered character done right, and why it's a trope that isn't necessarily done well for the most part, overpowered characters inherently means they are stronger than they should be, and for whatever reasons, it will take the wind out of the sails of a good franchise. If I were to introduce Viktor to you as who Viktor ended up being at the end of Arcane Season 2, I don't think it is something that could have been readily accepted by most people. The curiosity of the League of Legends fandom that was actually going through the story of Arcane was seeing how a character like Viktor, such a good-ass man, could end up possibly becoming the fucking herald of machinery and doofenshmirtzisms that is the Viktor at the end of Arcane Season 2. And I have to say, it was a glorious evolution. Bro got there from point A to Z in most brilliant thematic tension writing, and also, quite frankly, in a fully believable way, both thematically, personality-wise, and power-wise. But to first quantify his overpowered nature, I want to say that in regards to power scaling in Arcane especially, almost every single character is relatively scaled towards everyone else in their universe as relatively equally powerful. Now, I'm not talking about, random guard 47 that got completely butt-fucked by Vander after he became the Hulk. I'm talking about the actual champions in League of Legends that became characters in the world of Arcane, and even other characters like Cervica, I don't fucking know. But if you look at the broader characters like Jinx, Vi, Caitlyn, Ambessa, Jace, Echo, ultimately, almost all of them are relatively equally power scaled. Yes, some will have different edges over other characters, but ultimately, in a fight between two of them, you could definitely see the fight going either way, potentially. Obviously, different characters are stronger in different scenarios, but honestly, that's just good character writing in a battle-focused story. That said, when you look at the incredible power that Viktor manages to obtain by the end of Arcane Season 2, you recognize that, yeah, that guy's on a whole other fucking level. Bro pulls up on every other main character like he's Madara fucking Uchiha. His goddamn army of machines are strong enough to 1v1 even the strongest characters in the goddamn verse at this point. Now, I know I'm consuming all the League of Legends lore. I'm sure Mordekaiser is probably kind of an asshole too. But focusing on the world of Arcane, because that's what the story that we're talking about right now is, this dude is on a complete other level entirely compared to everyone else. Now, just to kind of give you a tease as to where this video is going to end up going, as I break apart this man's character and talk about why the character writing and themes are brilliant, thematically, not just power level wise, because ultimately power levels are a relatively not super relevant or important aspect to a story, which has such an emotional and thematic core like Arcane, but it does a fantastic job of exploring nuance through visuals and superficial aspects that I think Arcane really manages to do super well through the entire story. So I will leave you with this tidbit before going a little more chronologically and building up this essay from the ground up. There are two characters that I would quantify as overpowered characters in this story, not just Viktor. The other character that I would say is relatively overpowered by this standard of can easily destroy any other character in the entire story in a fight 1v1 in almost every single setting is Warwick, an actual fucking killing machine. Genetically mutated, created by Singed, goddamn Vander Hulk version. This piece of goddamn shit can destroy every other character in the franchise, aside from Viktor, and it's not even close. Now, the reason why I bring him up specifically is because if you look at these characters in the states that they are when they are at their most overpowered, when they are not beheld and beholden by the fucking normal physics of the universe that they're living in, where they will get absolutely annihilated by other characters if the situation were to change, it is when these characters lost their humanity. There is definitely a value to human life. There is definitely a beauty in humanity as it is, but true power in the world of Arcane comes at the behest of sacrificing one's own humanity, whether it's done consensually or otherwise. Both Warwick and Viktor have transcended humanity in some degree, and that is what made them unkillable monsters. Creatures so fucking powerful that everything else in the universe quakes and shivers at their very entrance into the room. Ambessa, a seasoned freaking warrior from the land of Noxus, a goddamn war-torn expansionist colonial empire, got absolutely decimated by Warwick in 3 seconds flat, not even acting like a speed bump in regards to Warwick actually making his way and clawing his way into the prison to find Singed. This is power, and this is power at the cost of being a very human. Now, I don't think it's anything of a coincidence to say that, oh yeah, coincidentally, the two characters that would be quantified as overpowered characters are the ones that sacrifice humanity to get there. I think it's a very, very nuanced approach. I would argue on a smaller scale, the people that are injecting themselves with Shimmer are also sacrificing their humanity for a power-up, and I would argue that humans giving their soul away by using these insanely powerful weapons of mass destruction, these hex-tech monstrosities, is also sacrificing humanity, even if perhaps more on a metaphorical level than on a physical one. I definitely think this is a theme that you are seeing throughout Arcane, and I will explain to you exactly how we get there. Now, I felt like starting off with this because I really want to make clear that what I think the major themes of Arcane are specifically in regards to what humanity is. And the nature of humanity is the center point of almost every single dichotomy in the goddamn story. To list a few, I think it's the inherent disgrace that is the classism between Piltover and Zaun. You see throughout Season 1 them consistently arguing about ethics, morals, and when you actually have to bend the knee to authority to make peace. The clash between Silco and Vander, another constant fight back and forth, whether pacifism is worth it, if it means it's coming at the cost of your freedom, or if you need to act like some kind of goddamn terrorist, if that's the only way to obtain your freedom. It is the nature of humanity that pushes and fuels this debate between these two honestly, relatively justifiable ideologies. It's true if you're a pacifist, there will be less casualties, but if you're not free, are you really alive? Singed is willing to do all forms of most despicable, disgraceful human experimentation, causing unbelievable amounts of pain to all of his test subjects, because in his mind, survival is the only thing that matters. He wants to cure death and save his daughter. No matter the unspeakable amounts of pain he is inflicting upon living organisms doing these things, the greater good is here. Being alive is what matters. He will turn Jinx into a monster, suffering as he does surgery on her because she will survive. The mutation must survive at all costs. Viktor in Season 1 had a different perspective. When he was a kid and he saw that the torture and torment that Singed would do to that creation that he was fucking diddling around with, torturing it as long as it survives, that's all that matters, he didn't understand. He left. He could not live a life like that. Living a life of torment purely for the sake of living is not really living. That was the perspective of young Viktor. And that is this perspective that fueled him into becoming who he is. It's a perspective that changed over time as his values have changed, but it was always about whether living in a certain facet is really living at all. I would argue that one of the biggest dichotomies in the entire show were the dichotomy of scientists. And again, this isn't super relevant to Viktor specifically, even though he is a scientist, and I'll talk about why this is important to him, but if you look at 3 of the major scientists in this universe, I would say you have someone like Jinx, you have someone like Echo, and you have someone like Jace. Jinx is a character molded by her past, stuck in the past. She is a culmination of her past, of her tragic backstory, of the way she suffered all this time. If you look at Echo, he is someone that is currently living in the present, not hoping for any form of future, discarding the things that happened in the past, living in his little bumblefuck nowhere tree with the firelights, just trying to exist in the very present. He is a culmination of living in the present. And if you look at someone like Jace, another scientist, he is living for the future. He says life is not about now, but it's about then. Life is all about progress. Why wait 40 years to work on Hex Tech if I could create some cool shit now? So the future, the immediate future, will come right away. So here you have another dichotomy of where you are living your own life. Are you living life in the past like Jinx, in the present like Echo, or in the future like Jace? Obviously, there is no good answer to any of these questions, but the nature of humanity and what it is to be alive and where you need to be living at any given point in time is obviously a major theme in regards to Arcane. This is every character, this is every debate, this is every dilemma, this is every philosophical or ideological outlook, is the nature of humanity and what it means to be alive. So that said, when it comes to power scaling some of the most powerful characters in this universe specifically, the idea that great power comes at the cost of humanity itself, I think, is one of the most brilliant ways to actually write powerful characters I've ever seen. Now, this is a very, very real analysis and I think very basic understanding. If you have these two characters, they're clearly basically surpassed humanity in one way or another, for better or for worse, and now they're overpowered and stuff like that. But an extra layer on top of this already very, very many-layered cake is the idea that these characters are also not necessarily held back by emotional connections either. Now, if you look at almost all these other characters, the ones that definitely fall into the still have humanity category of it all, like almost every single one of them ends up losing the fights that they do lose because of emotional hangups. Now, obviously, these characters are badass in their own right. All of them have time to shine in different areas. And while I don't think any of them, even at their peak physical prowess, would match characters like Warwick or Viktor when they're at their absolute peak, they still find ways to lose when it has to do with their humanity on the line. Dude, every time there's a scuffle between Vi, Caitlyn, and Jinx, and they're all in the same room, I don't know if I'm watching a fight scene or a sex scene, literally ever. But because Arcane is such an emotionally rich narrative that focuses so much on the humanities and character arcs of almost every single character involved, it's beautiful. It's art. It is dance every time they battle. When you have a battle that's relatively emotionless, like let's say Savika versus the rat dude with the extendable arms, right? That dude, that fight scene with the freaking gotcha arm, bro, literally popped out a Genshin Impact to Gamba her way to victory in that battle. Like, that was a badass fight scene. It was beautiful, it was glorious, I loved it. relatively not so much emotional tension between these characters, but simultaneously, while all that's going on, with that great fight with relatively low emotional stakes, the battle between these two characters, they go to head, the stronger one wins, it's pretty great. There's another emotional battle going on at the same time. You have this emotional, fascinating, convoluted character dynamic between Savika and Jinx after the whole first season of them hating each other, how they come together and put their feelings aside to work together to fight towards a greater goal. Humanity is at the core of every single fight scene in Arcane. So not only is it that these two characters, these Warwick and Viktor type characters that cast aside their physical restraints to ascend to a higher level of being in regards to pure goddamn fighting prowess, it also metaphorically unshackles themselves from the emotional burdens that humanity offers them as well. A beautiful symphony of themes and also of just fantastic superficial character dynamics. Now, also slight spoilers for the super conclusion of this video ultimately, is the fact that the answer is, despite that this is a show where you have these different characters and factions fighting for power in various ways, you have the Black Rose and you have Noxus, you have Piltover versus Zon, you have sisters fighting each other almost as much as sisters fight with each other in real life. Like, these women be vicious, goddammit, but like, ha! I've seen IRL women. Ha! Jinx got nothing on, you know. Okay, editor, cut all that out. We don't want to get canceled in the video essays too. But ultimately, the super conclusion of this video essay is gonna say that humanity triumphs at the end. I know that's obvious from a writing standpoint. You have all these warring factions, all these insane battles, but ultimately, humanity is the ultimate good. Ultimately, living is the ultimate purpose. And I mean living, I don't mean surviving. So now, as I define Viktor's actual arc going through this story, from the perspective of how this really is a conflict of different natures of humanity versus the lack thereof, how literally all the themes of all these characters and all these plot points are super interconnected in almost every single facet of the story, get ready to walk the walk of a man that evolves into godhood, only to realize that humanity was more ideal all along. Chronologically speaking, the youngest we ever see Viktor is he's a broken boy from the Undercity. Now, obviously, the battle between Piltover and Zon, the Overcity and the Undercity, this is a battle that you probably know all about because you probably watched Arcane before clicking on this video, otherwise that would be pretty freaking weird. I mean, hey, I'm overanalyzing all of fiction on this channel, okay? All lore will be consumed, so I guess you might be here, but to give you the Clips Notes, Piltover, uber gerich fuckers, alright? And Zon, it's like the lower class that literally gets spit on by the higher class, alright? It's pretty shitty, super relatable. I mean, unless you're one of the super gerich fuckers and you don't even realize that you're spitting on the pores. Oh, the pores! But I think we can all relate to a classist system in some way. There's always a richer man that is going to take advantage of you, okay? Now, the Battle of Humanity in Season 1 of Arcane was a lot more focused not so much on humanity versus transcending humanity, but it was a lot more focused on living versus surviving. You see, despite the fact that the Undercity were technically all citizens of Piltover, and they weren't giving any form of autonomy, they weren't giving their own nation at all, they were, you know, surviving, not having a really easy time of it. There was freaking drug lords ruling down there. No one gave two shits about the poor people scurrying around in the darkness and disease that was Zon at that point. Surviving from their day-to-day, trying not to make any noise so that the enforcers wouldn't come down and bully them a little bit. Even when Vander, a pacifist, was in charge, he was a pacifist and people were surviving in the Undercity, but were they really living? Now, this dynamic of surviving versus living is a very, very obvious human nature debate, I think, ever. I think we could all agree that slavery is more or less a human rights violation, despite the fact that, well, they're surviving. And I think drawing a line in the sand between these two ideals is very important for understanding basically the thematic dynamic of Season 1 in its entirety. This is a dynamic that is definitely echoed in the dynamic between Vander and Silco. Vander wants the people in the Undercity to survive, and Silco is willing to sacrifice them and commit unspeakable acts of atrocities in order for them to actually live. Heimerdinger's basically an immortal politician dude, scientist guy that's just around forever, but it's only after he actually leaves the political lifestyle and joins the Echo people that he actually learns to live and not just survive to an ancient age. Vi survives a prison sentence until she actually meets someone that means something to her. Caitlyn is surviving a life of aristocracy until she can actually start living, doing something that she feels like is important. Jinx is constantly surviving, plagued by her past and her horrible mistakes, how she is a jinx to literally everyone, and she doesn't start living at all until season 2. And Viktor, a broken boy from the Undercity, meets Singed for the first time in a cave. Singed is doing some unholy fucking Nazi science shit. I don't want to talk about that right now. Injecting this cute little lizard guy with God knows what the fuck. Because simply put, from his perspective, the mutation must survive. It's really not about whether the mutation lives or not, it's whether it survives. Now, I already mentioned Singed in the past, and I don't want to retread trodden ground, but this was obviously something that did not jive with Viktor at that age. Viktor wanted to live. He was a kid with a limp that could not walk very fast, and he invented this little boat thing that was able to go down the stream incredibly quickly. He didn't join the other kids to play because he wasn't like the other kids. He was gifted. He was alone, but he was gifted. I saw this video Schnee made in regards to an analysis of Arcane a while back, and I thought that it made a lot of sense. He said that basically every single scientist that's shown to be a scientist in the world of Arcane is a character that is isolated to basically the same degree that they are successful as a scientist. Jinx is a cool scientist, she's also alone. Heimerdinger becomes a politician, not alone, super social, and at that point in his life, he's not really much of a scientist. Jace starts off as this creepy, super rich mega genius who isn't really ingrained with politics or the world at all, and that's when he's a super successful scientist. Then he becomes a politician, becomes buddy-buddy with all the other social aristocrats of the world, and that's when he isn't really acting as a scientist. He goes off the radar, he goes rogue, he starts making Hextech weapons, and this is when he breaks his friendships with basically everyone on the council in order to create Hextech weapons, so he goes back into isolation, and once again is able to be a successful scientist. Echo is a character that basically isolated his entire community into the little tree fuckland, and over there, in isolation, he was actually able to do some cool sciencey, wine-me cool shit. So this parallel between isolation and scientific genius is super obvious and explored when it comes to characters like Singed. Bro's literally in a fucking cave, probably having sex with walruses or whatever you do for your free time over there. I don't know, that's basically everything I got from New Age Disney Star Wars. But Viktor actually ends up leaving Singed. Singed claims he has the solution to everything, focusing on survival alone, but that really isn't enough for Viktor. In the future, Viktor ends up teaming up with Jace, as we know. He's a gifted mind, despite being pathetic poor. Oh, ew! Oh, hilarious! Poor! Anyway, so despite being despicable poor, he ends up working with Jace, a very genius scientist guy in the upper city, and they develop something called Hextech. It is somehow managing to combine the mystical powers of the arcane magic with technology to create some sort of new science that can revolutionize and change the world. Now, he doesn't necessarily foresee all the crazy effects this could have, like, I don't know, if you invent a very powerful nuclear weapon, someone might at some point use it, and it would be very uncomfortable for a lot of people. But hey, progress is progress, Lamau! He throws himself into his work. That is what he's good at. And despite being a broken boy from the Undercity, this is the first time I think he really feels alive. He really has a friend in Jace. He really is actually doing something meaningful and creating something worth creating. And Heimerdinger tells him to stop. Heimerdinger's been around since the old magic rune wars shit. He's seen what magic could do to the world, and he knows that there needs to be a lot of fucking checks and balances in place before just unleashing this new technology onto the world. He basically eulogizes Viktor to his face and says, yeah, you're not gonna live to see what your advancements are gonna do, but good job, old boy! You fucking did it, you cute little bastard! His life was just a cog in a much, much greater machine that he would never even live to see the fruits of his own labor. On top of that, his friend Jace, the scientist, ended up picking up all sorts of slack when it comes to political situations. He joins the castle, he's buddying with aristocrats, and he basically leaves Viktor all alone again. With no human connection aside from Sky, a scientist lady who likes him for him, but doesn't actually acknowledge that because she's shy and he doesn't know because he's always been a broken boy. No one likes him for him, all right? No one ever liked him for him. They liked him for his mind. There's no way Sky likes him. I love when people don't make good decisions. Later, he's diagnosed with the fatal disease. His mortality is running out. His life is running out. He cannot live, and he can't even survive. He somehow merges with the Hex Court to some crazy degree with unprecedented voodoo science magic in a risky way where he basically risked his own life for progress. However, unfortunately, in the process of this, Sky gets caught up in the blast and she gets completely obliterated, and it's his fault. Not only is he alone, but he's more alone than he ever was before. He sees Sky's journal of how Sky actually liked him, and this is a man that is completely destroyed. He saved his life. He's surviving now, but for what? Is a life completely alone really a life worth living? Season 1 definitely grapples with this a lot, and I think it is probably the major theme when it comes to Season 1 on a much more thematic level. Obviously, I think the geopolitics is probably the forefront of the basic discourse in regards to Season 1, and while I do think it's fascinating, and I mentioned earlier Viktor's my second favorite character in Arcane, that's because Silco's my favorite character in Arcane. But this is not a Arcane video, it's not a Silco video, it's not a Season 1 video, this is a Viktor video. And I do think it's important to understand surviving versus living. I think it's important to understand the nature of what it means to be a human being, especially because I think the major theme of Season 2 is humanity. Now, it's definitely a nuance on the whole idea of what it means to be alive that is, I think, the major theme of Season 1, but I think it takes it to another level. It's no longer about surviving versus living. Now it's a little more about human life versus transcendence. After a casual little terrorist attack that kicks off Season 2 with a bit of a bang, Viktor is basically blown to bits. He barely survived. Only because he manages to survive with this random nuclear reactor piece of shit hex core is he actually able to, you know, make it out of there in one piece. He seems like an emotional toaster at this point. He tells Jace, the only thing that kept us together was our affection for one another, but we are very different people. And he leaves. At this point, his humanity has clearly slipped away to some degree, but not to some massive degree that'll cause, like, huge ethical dilemmas or anything. After venturing back to the Undercity, his goal still remains with humanity. Echoing in his head is the line that he said in Season 1, which to this day is one of my favorite lines in all of media. On the quest to do something great, they forgot to do something good. They have spent their lives devoted to developing a new level of technology that can enhance human life for the entire world. But they forgot to do good. They created weapons. They started battles. All sorts of crazy, heinous shit and child murder is going on now because they invented these weapons. And in the quest to do something great, bringing an age of technology where people could live longer lives, where people could have happier lives, more fulfilled lives, they forgot to do something good, and the consequences of their actions are reaching some sort of zenith that is causing havoc and oblivion to all the people that encounter them, and it's pretty fucking shitty. Jace and Viktor have always promised to put Hex Tech in the hands of the people, and that's exactly what Viktor decides to do in Season 2. After going down to the Undercity, he sees all these people ravaged by Shimmer, a disgusting, despicable drug that is morphing these people into shells of their former selves. But because he actually has all this random cool hex tech voodoo stuck in his ballsack, he is able to unleash these fucking shockwaves and like turn these people into like quasi-machinified and cure them of their diseases, and now they're happy. It cures their mental health too, which is pretty great. Where can I find a herald? I need a herald. A herald? Yeah, me, right over here. I could use some Borging, please. He's going around Borging people, and suspiciously, they're living fantastic lives, which all looks good. We got some crazy religious symbolism ass looking scenes that, like, goddamn, I want a painting of this to my house. It looks beautiful. But also, he's actually fulfilling his promise. He is literally giving people fucking Elon Musk neurochips in their brain. They become some sort of hive mind collective consciousness to some degree, where Viktor is a herald, a higher level of being that is literally giving life, in his perspective, to all these people. Yes, they sacrifice their individuality to some degree, but they're all pretty cool with it. They're living a transcended life. A life of beautiful fucking alien cyborg communists all living together in this little fucking room downstairs where they're happy. These people who have suffered their entire lives are happy. They're building a society where values are everything. People that care about each other. People that are free of all forms of ailments and diseases. Free of needing to claw their throats, trying to find more drugs to give them a high to survive till the next day. He has given Hex Tech to the people. He has done good on his path to doing great. He has stopped all forms of conflict. It's a utopia. Look at all these happy customers. To be honest, I don't even know if they could show negative emotions at this point. They're alive, they're happy, they're kind, but are they human? They've somehow evolved past that. I don't know if they've evolved to the point that I would say they transcended humanity at this point, but they are definitely at some sort of crossroads. They are in some kind of hive mind situation. Yeah, it's not as scary as the fucking Tyranids from Warhammer 40k, but they are no longer individuals by our understandings of individuals. But it's a utopia. It's a utopia of people caring and loving each other. And it's only because of a certain cataclysmic event that all of this changes. After Jace was flung through the entire Spider-Verse, this isn't a Jace video, I don't want to talk about that right now. He went through fucking hell on earth, he was walking through a goddamn apocalypse, machine empire. Bro literally got transported to the fucking post-apocalyptic Necron homeworld. Nothing likes him for some reason. They all want to fucking murder this man. And after probably months of trying to survive in that fucking machine psychopath hell pit, he ends up meeting this really mysterious cloaked figure, which won't at all be something incredibly important in the future, which sends him back to our current reality. He's left the Spider-Verse. I don't know, somehow Arcane is the only fucking show since the Spider-Verse that actually made a multiverse fucking awesome. Brought him back to where they are now. He's a little different. He has a beard. He's a little scraggly. And he wants to kill Viktor. What the fuck, man? Obviously, again, I don't want to get into like greater themes so much here. This will be a 4-hour video. I want to focus on Viktor's character development specifically here. So I'm not going to get into all the nuances of all the different character dynamics everywhere. Again, this is a Viktor video first and foremost. I feel like that dude doesn't get nearly as much love as he deserves. But Jace ends up showing up to the Utopia, baby. Walks up to the Herald. Viktor is like, "Oh, my old friend," he says in Russian accent. "Let's have vodka together." And then Jace pulls out a fucking nuclear cannon and blasts a hole in that man's face. It's a pretty rough moment. I'll admit, when that happened, I was mortified. It ruined my day, and then it fucking ruined my night as well. Like, dude, this is Viktor. He has suffered his whole life. He's a broken man. He's doing something good. The people in the Undercity have suffered. He literally became their herald. He created a utopia. Everything was good. This man had to fuck his best friend in the face. Bro, this is like the fucking 2024 crucifixion of Jesus, my guys. Now, I'm telling you the story in this order, even though technically right before all this happened, there was this very awesome conversation between Viktor and Singed, two scientists who have very different perspectives on what it means to be alive, because I wanted to get this message across first. Now, the shit that's fucking swirling around in the head of Machine Dog over here is the conversation he had with Singed, where Singed was right, where humanity is a weakness. As long as humanity is there, unpredictability will follow. Only a world that truly cures death, a world that focuses only on survival alone and nothing else, that is a world that can actually stand. A world where compassion and individuality and humanity exists, that is a world that straight up is unpredictable, and it's a world that could turn around and fuck you in the face, like Viktor just did. That was the gayest scene I've ever seen. I have never seen a man penetrated by another man in such a goddamn incredible fashion. I know y'all think that Vi and Caitlyn are the gayest characters in Arcane. They got nothing on Viktor and Jace. To remind you, Viktor went from alone as a kid to together with Singed to running away from him, together with Jace, who abandoned him. But he had Skye, who died, just starting a cult, to getting blasted and betrayed by his best friend again. This man went through the most ups and downs of all time, and his next move was definitely shocking to me, at least at first. On my first watch through, when he became a fucking machine overlord, I will admit, it definitely sent me for a loop. Again, Viktor's my second favorite character in Arcane, and he became ruthless. But when you think about it for just another moment, it just completely makes sense to see where he was. The fucking hive mind utopia was not a utopia. It was a utopia that stripped away humanity's individuality. It took these people that were alive and it put them into a state where they're just surviving. Transcending humanity just means you've lost your humanity. All of the people in his cult turn into these fucking machine ninjas. These creatures that can bring mass destruction. A single one of these creatures is strong enough to defeat almost any other character in this entire verse. And his goal is absorbing the Hex Core to create a beautiful world. A world without war. A world where everything can live. A world of peace, of prosperity, of evolution. A world that won't be dragged down by some unpredictable human that decides to do some crazy shit and betray their friends. It's a world without betrayal. It's a world without suffering. It's a world that transcends humanity. His goal is to create the very machine apocalypse that Jace saw when he was sent into the Spider-Verse. Now, on the one hand, that's obviously a pretty fucking gruesome world, but I'm sure those machines were having a pretty great time, all in all. His goal was a complete and utter transcendence of humanity, shedding all that dog shit behind in order to reach a new height, a new level of progress. He can finally create something great. He can create something where no one's ever alone. He's known loneliness all his life, and he could finally shut that out by merging everyone into a single hive mind. He then becomes the greatest threat the land of Piltover has ever known. He plans to overthrow the government, and he plans to overthrow the world. One could argue he wants all of humanity to reach a new height, but one could also argue that technically reaching a new height would mean that they are no longer human, so mass xenocide is also another way to describe the crazy shit that this guy is gonna do. A self-justified xenocide. Every person he touches, he turns into some fucking cyborg. He reads their minds, he absorbs their memories, he adds that person to the hive mind, and he moves on to the next. Eventually, after an incredibly gay scene with Jace, he ends up touching that dude, learning his memories, and learning a certain memory that Jace had that absolutely rocked him to his core. Now, I posed this question at the very beginning of this video, and this is the reason why I started my Overpowered Characters Done Right series all those years ago. How do you defeat an overpowered character? If they're truly overpowered character, the way they take an L needs to make some goddamn sense. In Jace's memories, he saw the shadowy cloaked figure that Jace met in the Spider-Verse. Shocker! It was him. That universe is a universe that is exactly what would happen if Viktor actually won. If Viktor managed to have all of the universe and all of humanity transcend into some sort of machine hive mind, discarding humanity for some sort of future and for some sort of progress. And in a universe like that, Viktor is left completely and utterly alone. He saw what the alternate universe Viktor told Jace, and that is what made him stop his crusade. How do you stop a character at the pinnacle of might in that verse? Well, that is a character that gets stopped by himself. In an act of complete selflessness, he does something that only a human can do, and it's having a meaningful death. He dies, along with Jace, destroying Hextech forever, banishing this cursed technology from existence, so no more people can suffer and writhe because of the monster that they created. Ironically, Season 1 was about surviving versus living. Season 2 was about humanity versus transcending humanity. And humanity ended up winning out ideologically, not only because of what a human could do while they're alive, but how impactful the death of a human being actually is. It's such a beautiful, tragic, and fitting way for the end of, honestly, one of the best written characters I've ever seen. It's heartbreaking to see what ended up happening to my GOAT, Viktor. But I don't think I've ever seen a character just write such a beautiful love letter to humanity like this goddamn beautiful bastard. Even when he was floating around in his miasma in his own mind, he wasn't alone. He had his memories of Sky floating around out there with him. When he was about to destroy the world, he wasn't alone. He had his best friend Jace there to talk him out of it and to give him a new perspective. Humanity is the culmination of everything that a human being can do. Every time you laugh and every time you cry, all of that added together is what makes you you. It makes you a human being and it makes you an individual. And that is something so beautiful and powerful, and no amount of progress and hive mind fake happiness can ever replace the beauty of what makes you you. It's such a tragic and beautiful message. It's such an unbelievable way for an overpowered character to rise and to fall. I mean, bro literally talk no jutsu'd himself. How fucking awesome is that? I feel like there's a million more aspects to Arcane that I can get into on a thematic level, even just to talk about more of this very point. The tragic beauty of the whole Echo sequence meeting with Jinx in the alternate universe, which is so very real but so very worthless in regards to who he is. It's only worth something in regards to what it means to him in his memories, but not into what it actually does to him in real life, because his universe is not a universe that will give him that happy ending. Every single bit of Arcane literally hits home as to exactly what makes humanity worth it. Why life has meaning. Why the fact that life comes to an end gives it its meaning retroactively all along. Self-sacrifice is ultimately such a human idea because progress is a logical one. An AI will never self-sacrifice. A machine that is focused on only evolution will never do any form of self-sacrifice that goes against its prime directive. But humanity is not just about you continuing, it's about your legacy continuing. Self-sacrifice is something only a human could do, and it's what Echo does when he leaves that reality. It's what Heimerdinger does when he helps Echo survive. It's what Jinx does in order to save Vi, and the list goes on. But ultimately, it's that final act that Viktor does that proves that ultimately, despite the fact that he became a fucking herald machine god, his humanity won out at the end. And he did do a very, very final, selfless, incredibly human act to save the goddamn world. This is beautiful writing. This is an artistic masterpiece. And this is an overpowered character done right. That humanity, with all its flaws, fucking kicked a machine god's ass. Thank you so much for being here. I do hope you enjoyed. It's the first time I've done a video essay in a while. I want to keep doing a little more of these. This literally reignited my passion for video essays in general. Subscribe, leave a like. I will continue doing lore dives. I'm trying for 2 lore dives a week here on Taku. I will consume all lore. I love stories, I love art, and I really feel like lore is kind of the art medium that I enjoy the most these days. There's so much out there, so much imagination, and so much humanity put into these pieces of art, and I am here for every fucking drop of it, baby. So, subscribe for lore dives. I will try to do video essays, as many as I can, whenever I can, when inspiration hits. And honestly, I very much appreciate you guys being here, whether you watch this video or not, whether you get this far or not. I haven't done content like this in like 5 years, okay? But I am literally back, baby. 2025 is gonna be my year! Anyway, try not to get canceled too much. Thank you so much for being here. Love you guys. Big kisses. Stay weird, fan.